The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery's straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 98. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field to talk shop. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, YouTube, or join the mailing list at ronmckeefery.com to stay up to date with the latest guests and whatever else I have going on. This week, super excited to have a buddy of mine, Bryan Mann. Bryan is an assistant professor in the physical therapy, athletic training departments there at Mizzou. He's an assistant director in strength and conditioning and had been there for about 14 plus years now. And just doing some fantastic things, giving back to the strength and conditioning community, getting out there presenting at pretty much every conference you can think of right now, and really doing some great work to try to further along our profession. We talk quite a bit about him, what made him decide to go way back when and get his PhD and bridge the gap between strength and conditioning and academics. And of course, we talk a lot about velocity-based training, which is really his niche. And so I know you're going to get a ton out of this episode. Before we do, we want to make sure we recognize all of our sponsors: IgnitionAPG.com, EliteForm.com, Sorinex.com, and of course, Play. Play is doing some fantastic things right now. And, with all of our sponsors, is a company that believes in the strength and conditioning coach. And, one of the things that I always want to make sure that we do is align with partners that truly have a passion for giving back to the strength and conditioning community. And so Play's doing that. They're at almost all these conferences. URSA there. They're at the CSCCA National Conference coming up. But they're, all these different conferences, giving back, Colorado, Washington there. And, it's one thing for companies just to continually take from the profession. It's another completely different thing for these companies that are really truly have a passion for helping strength and conditioning coaches further along the profession and do it the right way. And they constantly do that. So if you are in the market for sports flooring, make sure you reach out to Rich Gray, or any of the player representatives, and just have them come in and they're not salesy typical business individuals. They really are a bunch of former strength coaches and people that have been around the community for a long time, and they really do truly get it. And so have them come in and take a look. They got the turf, they got the flooring, and by far the best product on the market right now. So reach out to PlayUSA.com, join their Facebook page or their Twitter page, stay up to date with what they have going on. Lastly, I get lots of questions about Strength Coach Basic Training, and what Strength Coach Basic Training is it's an online internship or community for young strength coaches just getting in the field. Maybe they're at a place where they don't have a lot of a huge network and be able to bounce ideas off one another. Maybe they're in an internship where they don't really get too much of a educational program. And so this is essentially the 8 presentations that I give our intern class when they come in. Each checkpoint has a video and a assignment and project that goes with it. So, for the very first one, it's building your strength and conditioning cover letter, resume, references. We go through a whole video on what it takes to be qualified. They paste their old resume on the site. They paste their new one on the site, and other people give them feedback, and myself included. And so it's a great way to kind of get in there, get tons of feedback and input on what you got going on. And so I'd encourage you to go to strengthcoachbasictraining.com. If you're a young strength coach, join the community. I think it's $10 a month or something. It's very low. Try to keep it extremely reasonable, and and just build this community. And that's what it's all about. So I know you're going to get a ton out of this episode. Sit back, take lots of notes, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, welcome back. Real excited to have a buddy of mine on the show, Bryan Mann. Bryan's one of the guys I hang out with when I go to the conferences. He's I mean, if you haven't heard him speak, you've missed out tremendously, but he's speaking all around the world. He's that guy right now. So, man, I'm fortunate and excited to have you on the show, and thanks for coming on, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. I'll give you that $20 at the next conference.
I'll take you up on that. Not the plan. Bryan, kind of, you got a unique journey, man, and I want to share it with everybody. So, kind of tell us how and why you got into strength and conditioning, and kind of what's led you to your current position.
Well, how and why? I mean, I could really start back in about, whenever I was real little. Obviously, I've got a big red birthmark on the side of my face here. And so kids would always be making fun of me for it, picking on me, beating me up, whatever. So I figured if I got bigger and stronger than them, that they would leave me alone. And, man, it worked. Surprisingly, I started lifting weights for my 12th birthday. My mom got me that DP Challenger on the concrete with the gray plastic over the top of it, 1-inch barbell. I think I still got that stuff somewhere back at her house back in the closet. But,
that's awesome.
$20 for a birthday present led to a career. And then, I found the sport of powerlifting, and I did really well in that. Obviously I did well enough to where somebody asked me to write a book on it. And I got into coaching because I was sitting at the right place at the right time. I was actually studying for a biology. I was skipping one class to study for a test.
Yeah, this is a great story.
One of my friends happened to come up and talk to me there from high school, and he happened to be playing football there. And the strength coach, who's Rick Perry over at Central Michigan, so hopefully you met him this past season. He was like, hey, how you doing? Talking to me and everything. He's like, hey, you're a big guy. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm a power lifter. He's like, well, you ever heard of Louis Simmons? I do some of his stuff. I'm like, I've heard of him. I haven't done any of it yet. But then he said, hey, I can't pay anything, but you want a job? I said, yeah. And the rest is history. I went up there, and he had this big library. He had all these books on his shelf, and they were all translated Soviet texts and Mel Sif and stuff like that, and he got me to read them. And that's where I really got started at. I worked for him. I interned under Big House and Joe Ken, who I know you've had on the show before, and Mark Uyama when they were at Arizona State. Had some things come up, some family issues, had to leave early with Tulsa. And went back to Missouri State with Rick. And then I've been here at Mizzou now for, it'll be 11 years come May.
And tell a little bit of everybody about, the current job at Mizzou, because it's changed a little bit.
It has changed a little bit. So I got my PhD back in 2011, I think. And then I ended up getting a professor job as well. So now I'm an assistant professor of physical therapy and athletic training, as well as the assistant director of strength and conditioning. So now I still work with the athletic department. I've got the soccer team now. Still, that's the only sport that I've got. I do a lot of stuff trying to implement sports science type things with Josh Stoner, who's our director of applied performance. So I do that sort of thing with football, but I'm not on the floor with them very much anymore. But I've still got soccer, so I've got a nice little mixed role, so I can see the issues of the coach, still coach myself, and then do all the teaching and research stuff on top of that.
Yeah. So you're a powerlifter, meathead. You're going through, and all of a sudden you decide to go get your PhD for some reason. Why did you feel the need to go get your PhD, and kind of what did you think that was going to do for your career?
Well, there's an old quote. Those who have got the ability have the responsibility to take action. And I don't remember who said that, but it was back in the American Revolution. And I felt that there was a big disconnect between the research and the practical application of what's going on. Back in the time whenever I decided I wanted to go get it in about 2004, I kept reading all these periodization studies about 12 and 16, 24 weeks. Ron, when have you had 12 weeks straight to train?
Never.
And
Season,
so I was
maybe.
just looking at everything, and I'm like, this isn't applicable.
Right.
Somebody's got to do something. Somebody's got to do something about it. And I was looking around, and I'm thinking, well, there's not very many PhDs with a strength conditioning background. So, of course, they're not understanding the issues that the college and now the professional strength conditioning coach are having. Somebody's got to do something about it. So, and you know me, I don't like to sit there and gripe about things.
Right.
I say, wait for their ship to come in. I want to go grab a hammer and start building a thing.
Right.
So that's what I did. I decided that somebody needs to do something, and I'm going to be that guy.
With that's come, I'm sure the realization that it's kind of, as strength coaches, we're kind of us versus them sometimes, right? It's kind of us versus administration sometimes, us versus academics sometimes, us versus, and so now you've kind of bridged the gap between the two. You bridged the gap between academics and strength and conditioning. As a strength coach, what do you wish you knew then that you know now, about the other side?
Strength coach. Yeah, so as a strength coach, one of the things that I've gotten to from teaching, like I teach kinesiology, I teach sports performance conditioning, and I teach all those things, is that, I've gotten to be so good at the basics. And so many times we try and go away from those when that's really all we needed.
Mm-hmm.
That we try and get so advanced that we can't see the forest for the trees. Another thing that I really wish that I would have known as a strength coach before I got into it was the value of lunch. What I mean by that is, Pat Ivey, who's the director here, has always done a great job of managing people and working with people and getting the interaction between everybody going on. How he does it, I don't know. The guy is a genius at reading people. But, anytime that we've had a problem with somebody, like there was an issue that I was having with an athletic trainer much earlier on in my career here. And he goes, B, why don't you take him to lunch? So I took him to lunch. We talked. I got to see his side. He got to see my side. And we respected the hell out of each other after that. And we, were able to work great after that.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I started going to lunch with professors on campus. I'd be like, okay, this guy's researching this. Frank Booth is researching satellite cells in humans and their effect that they have on exercise. John Tifo is looking at metabolic syndrome. Let's have lunch with him. There's guys that are studying the neural activation. Let's go talk to these guys. There's Grace Soon, who's studying the effects of green tea on supporting the oligodendrocyte to make more myelin and multiple sclerosis and those sorts of things. So, look at how green tea can actually basically improve performance through increasing the myelin around the neuron cell.
Mm.
But by going to lunch with these people, everybody wants to talk about their work. If I come up to you and I start asking you questions about your program at the conference, we're going to talk for hours.
Right?
And you'll love it.
Mm-hmm.
We go in and we talk to these people about their research. They absolutely love it. Talk to the statisticians. There's a guy named Steve Osterland on our campus who was my stats guy, my stats professor. He got his degrees at Stanford, Princeton, and Yale. The dude is...
So dumb guy, right?
Yeah, dumb guy. Dumb guy. He's one of those guys that if you just kind of look at him and listen to him talk for a few minutes, you're like, man, this guy doesn't know anything. But then he starts talking statistics. You're like, holy cow. We got this thing called the Missouri something achievement test, MMATs. I had to take it whenever I was younger. I don't remember what it was called. That dude made that test. And he's that smart. But, just by, going and trying to make contact with the people and ask them about their work and getting to know them, they were so willing to help us. It was amazing. We got issues with statistics on trying to figure out something on our profile. We take it to Osterland. If we've got questions about myelination of a neuron, that's something that we were looking at way back in the day. We've got Grace Soon that we can go talk to. If it's fish oil, man, Kevin Fritchie is a professor here on campus. He's the guy that found out that fish oil was good. Found out all the benefits of it. So we've got all these people that we can reach out to. It's amazing that you could go to any university and there's those sorts of people there.
Right.
People just have to reach out to. There's this amazing disconnect that everybody thinks is going on. Disconnect, wall, this invisible wall that we have, that it's us against academics.
Right.
Well, if you've ever tried to reach out and talk to them, they're great people.
Sure.
They want to talk to you, but they perceive that there's this big athletics, barrier between the two, and you won't talk to them, and the strength coach is thinking that they're sitting over in the ivory tower and they won't want to talk to us. And in reality, if you just call them up and you offer to take them to lunch, who's going to turn down a free lunch, for one?
Right.
Two, you end up making some great contacts and learning tremendous amounts.
What a great tip. What a great tip. So flip it now, though. How, as an academic, what, where's the gap being missed on the other way? Because, it's very easy for them to say, well, that guy's just running around screaming his head off and not really doing anything, you know? So, how have you been able to kind of help them see, like you mentioned, that practical application side of things?
Well, Dr. Kramer has done a great job of that. He's actually made practical application be a portion of the every journal strength condition research article. But one of the things that you can do is whenever you sit down and you talk with them, talk about the gaps that you've got.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, now I see all this research about everything's 12 weeks. I get 6. What can I do? And can there be something right off the bat? No, but they can help you set something up to learn a lot from.
Sure.
It's just opening those lines of communication. And when those are open, God only knows what's going to happen. We actually work with a guy that a lot of people will know, but they don't really know his name through strength and conditioning. A guy named Dr. Andy Fry over at KU.
Yep.
Some people see me wearing this Missouri shirt. They're like, he's talking to a KU person? Is he freaking crazy? Well, all the overtraining studies that have been out in this country have been through him.
Yep.
Recently you saw this thing about KU and testosterone cortisol. That was him and one of his grad students.
Mm-hmm.
They've done amazing things over there. And just getting those conversations going with those sorts of people and getting their minds open and seeing the issues. They're smart and they want to help.
Right.
They want to be not be a part of the problem, but being a part of the solution. It's unreal what can be done.
Sure. So for the young strength coaches that are listening, that are just getting out, that maybe had an average, foundations of educational research or something along those lines, what steps would you recommend for them to kind of really, obviously you're well read and research is a passion of yours, but for the average strength coach that maybe the research isn't the passion, what would be some recommendations you have in terms of trying to stay up with current research and maybe a tip or two so that you're not reading a 30-page study to get the one nugget out of it,
Right. Well, the abstract. Read the abstracts. The abstracts are about that long. Whenever you look at the article, who can't take the time to read 3 paragraphs?
Right.
And then you'll get the gist of the study. Without having a research background, you're not going to understand. A lot of people aren't going to understand the statistical analyses, the methodologies, the this, that, and the other. But they could read that, the abstract, and then go to the end and read the practical application for the journal strength conditioning research. Another thing that I've started doing, and Ron, actually I took this from you, is I got on Twitter and I started following researchers that I liked.
Right.
That I liked their stuff. And guys like Mike McGuigan, I might have, down in New Zealand, I might have completely butchered that, I don't know. Nick Gill, who's a PhD, who's with the New Zealand All Blacks. Jan Lemure, Martin Boucher. There's all these different professors or researchers that I've started following on Twitter. And not only do they put out their studies that are applicable, they're posting studies that are applicable from other people. Rob Newton posted my last 225 study last week. I'm like, holy cow. I almost said something bad on here.
That's all right.
I was like, holy cow, Rob Newton is sharing some of my stuff.
That's
Man,
awesome.
This is freaking, I had my head was this big. And normally it's like this big, but then it got to be that big when Rob Newton shared some of my stuff. But, that Twitter is just amazing. The amount of information that's shared on there.
No doubt.
And if you go to the good people, they're sharing only good stuff. They're not sharing anything that's crap.
Right. Well, tools, resources, things like that is all. If you use them for good, it's just like anything. If you use them for good, they can be great. But if you use them for evil, then they can zap your time and all that kind of stuff. And so I couldn't agree more. Well, you're obviously you're well known for your work with velocity-based training and dealing with coaches. I mean, obviously we take on lots of interns, so do you, and their understanding of velocity-based training is varying, right? It's different people have different understanding of it. Try to simple it down, dumb it down, make it the simplest form of why we even need to worry about velocity training. Why can't we just go out there and lift weights, and maybe, how to kind of, integrate that, or where to start with really understanding the concept of velocity-based training.
Okay. Well, the concepts, we can even take a step back and say that everybody needs velocity-based training. No, they don't. I always go back with something that I've been saying for a while is I'd always rather be right than lucky. And velocity-based training allows me to be right. We know that the maximum amount that we have our athletes in the strength and conditioning a week is 8 hours. And there's 168 hours in a week. Those other 160 hours matter too. If we could go in and, I've given a whole talk on this before. That was an hour and 20 minutes. And we got like a 30-minute show, so we'll just go with the cliff notes.
Sure.
But basically, if you read Stress to Life, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, etc., you realize that all stressors affect the body the same way.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if it's a psychological stress, if it is a academic stress, if it's relationship, family, money, not eating, not getting enough sleep, the choices that they make on the weekends, all those things affect training. Playing time, if somebody's getting a lot of reps versus not getting very many, that affects their training. So the velocity allows us to know exactly what weight that person needs to be moving for that day, for that moment. And the way that it does it is there's some studies that were done. I believe it was by Guillermo Badia. I think that was the lead author, but Sanchez Medina was the anchor on the right side. So if you go to Scopus and look up Sanchez Medina, you'll be able to find this. Is that there is a perfect relationship between whenever they tested exercises on a Smith machine, on a bench press and a squat, there was a perfect relationship between a percentage of 1RM and the corresponding velocity. So if you moved, let's say, 65% at 0.8 meters per second, and don't take that as gospel, I'm just throwing something out there.
Right.
Yeah, I said that at the conference, and everybody came up to me, oh, so you're saying that this percentage of this speed?
Yeah.
No, damn it, that's just an example. But let's say that 65% they were moving that at 0.8 meters per second. So any day that they do 0.8 meters per second, they're moving the load at that speed, they're moving 65%. So some days they may be moving more weight, some days they may be doing less. In a recent article in the Australian Strength Conditioning Association, Mladen Jovanovic, I think he's been on your show, has he not?
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. And he has a graph in there about what he actually did with, he took a graph and he put their preseason tested 1RM. Okay, and it was going straight across. Mm-hmm. And then he took a velocity predicted 1RM from one of those same studies. I think it was the Guillermo Badia, or it might have been the East Garrido study. And he plotted what their predicted 1RM was for that given day. Here's our normal line. Some days we're here. The next time they came in, they were there. Then they were below the line. Then once they were right on, then we're way above, way below. So it showed that if they would have gone off of that just predetermined 1RM, some days it would be way too light, some days it would be way too heavy. And we know if we're going way too heavy, there's a good chance that we're going to hurt the athlete in the weight room. If they're going way too light, they're not getting the desired train effect. So there's some days that they were lucky and they were right on, and there's a lot of days that they weren't right. Mm. So I would always rather be right than lucky. So that velocity-based training allows you to know that exact load for that athlete for that day. Now, I know what somebody is thinking, because I've talked to a lot of people about it, is, well, if the athlete just isn't feeling good, then they're just going to tank.
Right.
So, well, one, if they're not feeling good, they're going to be moving lighter weights anyways, regardless. Two, if you're worried about the lazy guys, don't give them that option. We've got a level system here, and it's not until the upper levels whenever the guys have our trust, mm-hmm. and and they trust us and we trust them, that's whenever they get to do the velocity-based training. It's not something that everybody does.
Right.
Because you've got to be able to trust the athlete that they can handle that sort of autonomy. And the guys that can handle that sort of autonomy, they're the ones who make fantastic games.
Sure.
So giving the onus on the athlete, that's made a big difference for us here.
Well, there's tons of tools in terms of tracking velocity and things along those lines, and the competitive part of you comes out then too.
Absolutely.
That's
there's that study by Randall et al. That came out, and Randall was the lead author, but Nick Gill, who is with New Zealand All Blacks, they came out and they just did, I think it was 60 kilos on squat jumps for this big group. One group received the feedback of velocity, the other group that did not. The group that received the feedback, they improved their sprint times, their jumps, and their change of direction ability. So they had a much higher quality of work. That competitive nature came out.
Right.
They were trying to beat their own self, and they were trying to beat everybody else on the team or in the study on how fast they were, the power numbers and the velocity numbers that they were hitting. So, yeah, you get that competitive nature comes out.
Well, that's what, as strength coaches, that's what we got to tap into. Obviously, that's what makes our population different than the Joe Schmoes. Is that they're the most competitive people on the planet typically, and you want to use that, and that's just one way of doing it. But let's say you don't have those tools. Let's say you're at a place that doesn't have the money for, Elite Form or GymAware or Tendo or whatever. What are some ways in which you can kind of still implement velocity-based training in your program?
Well, there's going to be some ways. There's a couple that I really would recommend, and one would be the simple stopwatch. Whenever you get down to it, the Tendo and the GymAware, essentially, they're linear position transducers, right? So what does that mean? They've got a high-tech stopwatch in there. At this basics, and Evan, he hears this, he'll be going crazy on me. Like, GymAware is far more complex than this.
Sure it is.
But the Tendo, I know the way that it works, because we've broken some and opened them up and looked, is there's a potentiometer in there. And all that is there's a spool, and it goes around, and how many times it goes around and hits this little clicking thing, it tells you how much distance has gone out on the cord. And there's a stopwatch in that microcomputer, so they can take the distance and the time and calculate the velocity. So knowing that and realizing that time is definitely a function of it, we can simply use a stopwatch. So let's go for, let's see, a guy named, I believe it was Dravic in Explosive Training for All Sports. He said that if you take like 20% of your squat max and do squat jumps for 10 seconds, then you'll probably get about 6 reps. Keep adding on 10 pounds until you aren't getting 5 repetitions in that 10 seconds. You can do something very similar on bench press. You'll start out at 50, 60% and see how many reps you can get in 10 seconds. Then just change that out and go up in weight. Something else that I've done is actually just going with 3 seconds and try and get 3 reps in 3 seconds on a bench press and 2 reps in 3 seconds on a squat. If they couldn't do that, they were using too much weight. That was kind of my yardstick. That isn't really published anywhere.
Sure.
But I'm just going to reference something that I've seen published before, like with the Dravic in his book.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Alan Hedrick does some things like that out at College Pueblo or whatnot. Well, that's fantastic, man. And it's obviously you speak about that quite a bit, and you have a book on it, and we'll link that up as well. But definitely an area to improve upon, and I really like what you guys are doing there at Missouri, where it's part of the level of training age. They have to meet certain criteria before they get to that point, and then it becomes it's that old question that we always ask ourselves: well, how much is too much? If the guy squats 600 pounds, do we really need to keep putting 700 pounds, 600 pounds on his back? Or can we find a PR a different way? And so I really like what you guys are doing there with that. We always end the show here, man, with some resources. So, give us the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received.
Man, this is actually, I got this from 2 people. I got one from Jeff Madden when he was the head strength coach at University of Texas, and the same piece of advice when I was an intern under Mark Uyama at Arizona State. And it was do so many things and do them so well that they can never afford to fire you because it's just a bad business decision. It would take 2 or 3 people to replace you. So make yourself invaluable to your department.
Absolutely.
And it might not be that you work with every one of the 21 sports that are there or something like that, but there's something that you do that is so irreplaceable that nobody could ever afford to get rid of.
Oh, great advice.
Yeah.
What about a favorite quote that you have, either one that you use with your athletes or you have posted up in your office or something along those lines?
Man, there's one from Napoleon Hill that is, growth only comes through continuous effort and struggle. And, I found that to be so true, with yourselves and with your athletes. I mean, how many times do you have that star athlete that comes in that's just genetically gifted and they don't work for anything? They don't care about it. They've already got that. They don't esteem it because they didn't have to work for it. They didn't have to struggle to get it.
Absolutely.
Then you've got that hard-nosed kid who's, come in and he's made himself into an athlete. He works his ass off every day because he knows what it does for him.
Right.
He's seen the improvements, and he completely has a high esteem and high value on his playing ability and his training because that is what has gotten him there. So that's probably my favorite quote.
Absolutely. Well, I know you're well read, but give us a book maybe inside strength and conditioning and outside of strength and conditioning that you recommend.
Well, first off, I'm going to say, if you want to read my books, it's only because you've got insomnia. They want you to sleep in a heartbeat. So it's cheaper than Ambien if you value it, put it out for the years. But some of the books that I really like, there's one that's out of print that is the, hold on, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Weightlifting, Fitness for All Sports by Ion Varga.
Yeah.
That is one of the best books that I ever read. Published in 1984. I had to get it, used and abused and expensive as heck because it's out of print, so they could charge whatever they wanted for it.
Right.
Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zatsiorsky is fantastic. Super Training by Mel Sith. If you ever talk to Rick, he calls that his second Bible. Those are what I really recommend. Then, Michael Yes's his Secrets of Soviet Sports Fitness.
Yeah.
Joe Kin, his The Strength Coach's Playbook is a great book that I recommend. We have all of our interns read that.
Mm-hmm.
It gives we do a little bit of tier system here, but it also gives just a great way for someone who's just getting in to balance their program out, as well as to it gives some overviews of traditional periodization, the concurrent method, how to produce things through a level system, implement extra workouts. Does a great job of that.
Absolutely. What about one outside of strength and conditioning?
I was thinking about this whenever I got it. And I'm like, what's one of the books that I've read that I still use today? And there were three. There was one that Kaz Kazadi got out of Baylor. Well, two of them that Kaz Kazadi got me to read. And they are Bushido, which is The Way of the Samurai, The Way of the Warrior. And people haven't changed a whole lot in millennia.
Sure.
Yeah, since we're Homo sapiens, we still act the same way. And there was a lot of stories in that just made complete sense that I could take the athletes. I mean, whenever you get down to it, the samurai had sports psychology done centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
They had that stuff down. They understood if they didn't perform properly and train properly, that they were dead.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things in that I could take and give to the athletes as stories. And the one that really stuck out to me most was something that I coach my athletes with and I coach the seniors with. And it was, don't tell somebody what to do because they will push back against you. Give them a story and a parable from your life and lead them to the conclusions that you want them to get at.
Yeah.
If they get that conclusion, that's okay. Because if you tried to force them to do it, they wouldn't have got it anyway, and it would have just ruined your relationship. So there's that one book.
Yeah.
Along those lines was Agakure, which was the lessons from the samurai that somebody had written down over time. Miyamoto Musashi or something like that. But Agakure, Hagakure. And the last book that outside of strength and conditioning that I really like and I used a lot is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, I believe. I pulled it up over here. It actually, the dude won the Nobel Prize for that book. And it's about the journey of the Buddha. It's completely fictional, but he takes a lot. It's like that historical fiction.
Right.
And there's things that are in that book that I've been able to use with the athletes. And one of the things that I remember from that is that the Siddhartha had said, I can always do three things. I can think, I can wait, and I can fast. And I'll always bring that up. We're like, man, I can't do anything. There's three things you can always do. You can think, you can wait, and you can fast. And those are doing something.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, those are my two books outside of strength and
I'm
conditioning.
going to have to pull that one up. I haven't read that one. That's good.
Yeah, man, it's like 1920s, and it's still great. I think that guy wrote Beowulf, too, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's he's a big-time author from back then.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. What about some technology now? What about an app that you maybe use for your own productivity or one you use with the athletes?
Well, one is Twitter. I got off talking about that, and it's I only follow a few people. I think I've got like 200 people that I follow, and that's because they're putting out the research.
Right.
It's like, man, I don't want to know what you ate for lunch, and I don't care. But if you're going to be putting out stuff that's going to help me make me better, I'm going to follow those guys.
Sure.
Something else is see if I can actually pull up the phone here. There is something from GymAware called Kinetic that I'm just starting to play around with.
Okay.
I guess Kinetic is the same company that GymAware is at, but they've got all the different questionnaires, RPEs, all those different things that you can get the athletes set up with so they can just plug it in on their phone. I've been using Google Docs, and I've been using, having athletes email me stuff, but that's going to be one less chance for somebody to enter it wrong. So that's something else that's been great. People have been telling me about Evernote. I want to get on that.
It's a good
but
one.
I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
And another one that I just got set up with is Hootsuite.
Yeah.
That finds your Twitter, your Facebook, and whatever else, so that you can just, if you need to get something out to a lot of people, you can use that.
Yeah, both good. Both good. Evernote's fantastic. You definitely got to hook up on that one.
Yeah, got to get on that. If I've heard it from like 40 people in the past months, so I'm like, I've really got to do this.
Well, especially when you combine as many different things as you do. Yeah. What about websites that you generally check out?
One that I go to daily is EliteFTS.com.
Okay.
I believe in the live, learn, and pass on that Dave has made his motto. I check that out every day. There's a lot of great things from people with different backgrounds for powerlifting. There's strength and conditioning. James Smith, the thinker's on there. Buddy Morris, I think, is still on there. They've got a lot of great resources, great articles every day, great Q&As.
Sure.
So that's one website that I go to all the time. PubMed, I use that one daily. I always say if you think you're the first one to figure something out, it's because you're using the wrong search terms. So, because I've done that. I thought, oh, dude, I know nobody's ever done this before. I'm going to do it. Then I just changed one word in my search, and I'm like, okay, there's 40 studies on this. Great. I'm not as smart as I think I am.
That's right. Well, buddy, man, we talk about this on the show quite a bit, and about people and coaches, and I try to have coaches on the show that are forward thinkers, that are contributors, and they're changing the profession one way or another. And you've done more for our profession in the last couple of years than a lot of strength coaches combined. And just putting out so much great research and bridging that gap and encouraging and motivating strength coaches to pursue a PhD and different things along those lines. I mean, it's been fantastic, man. So I'm so proud and happy to call you a friend, and truly appreciate the role that you've had in my own development and so many others.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you later, buddy. Have a great weekend.
You too.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out RonMcKeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery. on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.